Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, starring Brad Pitt, Kate Blanchett, Taraji P. Henson, Tilda Swinton, Jason Fleming, Elias Koteas, Julia Ormond, and Elle Fanning, directed by David Fincher. Now, I have seen this movie before, and I remember crying in it, if I may make sense of myself. I'm confessing myself to death. So, is it going to be the case right now? Let's get into it. Daisy is at a hospital dying as her daughter Caroline, played by Julia Ormond, says her goodbyes to Daisy as she tells the story of 1918 when the war was going on as a blind man working on a clock as he gets a letter telling their son he's dead, and he kept working on his clock as he shows in a train station on Canal Street as he wants time to go backwards to see and hear his boy again as he died a broken heart. And I didn't get what the point of that story was. It's not the movie. It could be in the editing room, as this movie is 2 hours and 46 minutes. It's too long. Daisy wants Caroline to read a story of a man aging backwards named Benjamin Button, played by Brad Pitt, as he was born on a day with fireworks, as his father, Thomas, played by Jason Fleming, takes him away from his wife as she's dying and is being chased by the authorities, and arrives to a house with some people that could take better care of him and that he can than he can. Benjamin accidentally gets stepped on by Queenie, played by Taraji P. Henson, and Tizzy, played by Mahershala Ali, even though he had a longer name at the time, as Queenie takes care of the baby as her own as she hides the baby in a drawer, which seems rather unsafe, and shows the master of the house the baby as they learn he's aging backwards as they think he might die. And Queenie calls the baby Benjamin, and she takes care of the child as she wants Tizzy to help her out caring for the baby. And we sometimes go back and forth between then and the hospital bed, and which did drive me crazy at times during the movie. Benjamin grows up and is curious about the world, and as he learns to be grateful for what life he has, and every breath he breathes, which is on an inspiring thing to say to a child. And sometimes the pacing was off in this movie, as there were many times in the movie dragged a little too long. They take Benjamin to a church as he says to the priest he's 7 years old, despite he looks a lot older as an older man. As he learns to walk, thanks to the priest calling God to make him walk for the first time at age 7, which was a nice work in progress, as people came and gone as he's growing up at the house, and as he meets an African American man who's a free man and treats Benjamin like a friend, as people stare at him rather funny in an odd kind of way because he's hanging out around an African American man, which luckily so far doesn't call him the N-word. But this is a PG-13 rated movie, although sometimes for movies about slavery they get away with that at that rating. But this movie isn't about slavery. It's more about a life story of Benjamin Button, who's the protagonist in this movie. And this movie is based on a short story by F. Scott Fitzgerald, who's the famous writer of The Great Gatsby. Thanksgiving comes as he meets a girl who changed his life forever, named Daisy, as a young lady at age 7, played by Elle Fanning, who was a good kid actress like her sister. Now she's an adult, that's why I said was. Benjamin learns Queenie is pregnant with a baby as in the middle of the night goes underneath Daisy's hideout and confess their secrets as they get caught by a lady, as she says to Benjamin he ought to be ashamed of himself, as they were just playing in the middle of the night. And at this point, I'm getting bored with this movie as it's slowly paced and it goes back and forth rather unnecessarily as his friend goes on an airplane to see the world and unfortunately leaves Benjamin behind. A lady that Benjamin never could get her name moves in with the dog as Benjamin pets it, which was cute, which is weird because I never expect cuteness from David Fincher. Benjamin starts to grow up a little more with hair and on his armpits as well as his body, maybe. I didn't get a close look at it. As he looks pretty good as he's getting older. I mean, you get my point. And he gets a job on a boat called the Chelsea, and the scenes on the ocean were breathtaking back in the day as he drives in the ship at times and has a good relationship with the captain. And this is one of my things that I admired about that Great Gatsby movie with Tobey Maguire and Leonardo DiCaprio was it was pretty to look at as they get drinks together. And this movie drags quite a bit as this is a boring film. One of my also issues with the Great Gatsby film as it's 2 hours and 46 minutes. And again, cut at least 45 minutes to an hour out of this movie because I feel it dragging quite a bit. Benjamin gets a ride with from his father, and he has a drink with him without realizing it's his father, as he won't figure it out until later in the film. Daisy visits her grandmother as Benjamin is in the morning. He takes her to the boat and asks the captain if they could go out to the sea. And the shots are beautiful, and believe it or not, this movie is well made and well shot, but like the last time with Zodiac, the pacing was off. But this is done a little longer than Zodiac did. Benjamin tries to go to the drugstore with the lady that he can't remember her name passes away, and Benjamin goes off to the world as Daisy asks of him to write her a postcard from everywhere. And he had wrote to her everywhere. He went until Daisy grows up to be played by Cate Blanchett and becomes a ballet dancer in New York City. And the characters are well developed as the actors act very well in their parts. Benjamin meets Elizabeth, played by Tilda Swinton, who was with her husband at the time when they first meet. And they meet again as Elizabeth is very shy of Benjamin as she thinks he's stalking her while staying at the same place as her, as he offers her tea, and the scene was rather awkward when she lets Benjamin get to know her as they talk until dawn and meet again and again every night, and they do have dinner and wine one night in the hotel as she tells the story of how she swam for the longest time until she got tired in the middle of the ocean. And they do kiss barely until she leaves the table, and another night Benjamin takes her out in the snow, and the cinematography looks good, but unfortunately I'm getting very bored again and again. Come on, David. Don't bore me. You're better than this at this point. I'm an hour and 13 minutes into the movie, and I have an hour and a half more to go. As I'm not checked out at all, it's just boring me half to death. And again, 45 minutes to an hour. Get it in the cutting room. As the Benjamin Elizabeth story could have been one of them. Benjamin joins the Navy with the captain, and the crew as they go to war with, and Elizabeth leaves Benjamin a note saying it was not nice to have met you. And she goes back home with her husband, and they get ready to go to war while on the sea as they run into 1,300 men in the water being hit by torpedoes, and they cross a submarine as they're being shot and they hit the submarine as the boat barely goes down. Oh no, it does go down. What am I talking about? And Benjamin gets out of there alive, and the fight scene with the submarine was rather hard to see what was happening on the screen, but it's necessary to keep the movie but it make it lighter, for crying out loud. Benjamin comes back home to Queenie and his sister, whom I forgot her name off the top of my head, as Tizzy died in his sleep, and Queenie is very happy to see Benjamin come home as he changed quite a bit. Benjamin sees Daisy as an adult, and she doesn't recognize him at first, but she does eventually. She does after a few seconds, as she's also happy to see Benjamin as a man. And the acting by Cate Blanchett and Brad Pitt in this scene is very good, as they have good chemistry, but it takes too long. It takes a long time to see them as adults, as this movie took like an hour and 30 minutes to get there. Get it moving! Benjamin and Daisy have dinner together as she shows her ballet moves, and he can't have intercourse with her that night as she's old enough to do anything she wants. Unfortunately, Daisy goes back to New York the next day while Thomas until while Thomas comes sees Benjamin and takes him to dinner as he's sick with a disease, as Benjamin goes to Thomas's company called Button's Button and tells Benjamin he's his father, as he tells the truth about why he took Benjamin to the house where he was raised. And I'm having problems with this revelation, as it took too long. Get to the point! As he should have gotten to the point when he first saw Benjamin as an adult. And there were times it got repetitive. For example, like in this review, this one guy was struck by lightning 7 times, as the audience sees the different ways, which I think should be cut out of the movie too. Benjamin takes Thomas outside as he sees the sunrise before he passes away, which is a beautiful shot, as I did like that. And as the music during the scene and the funeral is depressing, sure, but it was kind of distracting. After the funeral, Benjamin goes to New York to see Daisy in the show for the ballet, which did look pretty nice, as he visits her after the show, and they go to a party as he meets David, who was her dance partner and her boyfriend. And I get the impression as he leaves the place, as Daisy goes in a taxi cab with David, he says he's happy for her when really he's not, as she thinks she's in love with David, as he goes back home rather depressed and rides his motorcycle and gets a letter from the mail in Paris, France, to visit Daisy at the hospital. And why was she there? Because she broke up with David, and she got hit in a taxi cab as she comes out with a woman in her show, as her leg crushed and broken in 5 bones, as she tells him to stay out of his life and never danced again. And this is depressing. This is such a depressing movie with the struggle of life. Can we just get going? Daisy comes back to Benjamin's life as Queenie gets older and Benjamin gets younger, and he and Daisy have intercourse as he asks her to come away with him, as they do and have an adventure of their life and sleep together. As I'm not checked out or anything again, but I just want this movie to be over. It's dragging for 45 minutes to an hour, as I was done with it. They go back to New Orleans, and Benjamin learns Queenie passed away and had a funeral and buried her in a cemetery, as they sold the house and buy a duplex, and they hear music on the TV and go swimming, and their neighbor has a job with the physical therapy. And while at the pool, Daisy cries because of the chlorine, as they go on an adventure to the river where her father passed away. And Daisy now owns a studio where she teaches young girls ballet dancing, and Benjamin comes by the studio and she tells him she's pregnant, and he's happy for her as he's concerned about being a father, and they talk about it at a diner. And the next thing you know, Daisy goes into labor and births a baby girl, as Caroline finds out Benjamin is her father, and she cries her heart out, and Benjamin tells Daisy to find another man to grow old with as he leaves them. And this is getting too depressing. Like, I wanted to stop the movie and cry myself half to death, as I'm getting depressed. And at the end of the day, it's not turning into a feel-good movie. It's turning into a hell of a depressing movie. Caroline reads a letter Benjamin wrote to her about what he wished he could do for her, and now I'm getting very depressed. And like Zodiac, there was definitely a good reason why I didn't go back to this movie over the years. Benjamin visits Daisy and Caroline without realizing who her father is and her now husband Robert, while Benjamin is getting older, as he looks so much younger. And our aging backwards thing is hard to believe in real life. Nice try, F. Scott Fitzgerald. It's too hard to believe, unfortunately. Daisy visits Benjamin in his hotel room, as he never stopped loving her, as she leaves him, and realized he lost her forever, as she gets a phone call years later as Benjamin has Alzheimer's, as he's in poor health and unfortunately doesn't remember anything or Daisy at all, as he's a young boy, cursing his mouth off and climbs on buildings believing he could fly. And he gets older and turns into a baby, as he died in his sleep in 2003, as the Hurricane Katrina comes up at the hospital, and the movie is over at this point, And I can't believe I've survived this entire movie in one sit, because it would have taken me 2 different sits to finish the entire movie off. But the movie is well made, but it's just unfortunately too long. Come on. Now it's time for the rating. I'll give this movie a 4.0 out of 10. This movie is way too long and depressing to the point I could cry my heart out. I wanted this movie to be done like an hour and 45 minutes to 2 hours after it started, as it was boring. But don't get me wrong, it's well shot, well made, and the performances are great, as Brad Pitt and Kate Blanchett have good chemistry together. There are some good scenes and bad scenes, with the score being a little too distracting in between both scenes. And the back and forth scenes between Benjamin's stories and the hospital scene was a little unorganized. As far as an editing is concerned, and hopefully I'll see a better movie from David Fincher next time. I hope he can pick up the pace as far as like trimming down the movie goes, because I couldn't stand how long this movie was. I just couldn't. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and next time we'll be back with The Social Network. I hope that's a better time this time. And until next time, trim it down, David.